Welcome to the overview of the TOEIC TOEFL IBT Independent Writing Tasks, Part 3. In the final part of our three-part series, we will be reviewing the pros and cons activity. We will also discuss a test trick involving thinking about the logic of the response we give on these particular tasks. We will then take a few minutes to put it all together that we've learned in these 3 videos, give some final thoughts, and then discuss our first homework assignment. So, what can the pros and cons activity teach us? Again, being able to think about different perspectives helps us in making stronger arguments for the opinions and choices we make. If we can anticipate an argument against our choice, then we can better prepare for it, and thus write a better answer. So think of this activity in a way as 2 sides of our brain, arguing with each other to help us form a stronger, clearer argument. We also must consider the importance of logic in our argument. Remember, there are no right or wrong answers to these essays, since they are mostly personal choice, but we must make sure if our answer is logical. So again, when taking the test, we need to think about, well, is the response I'm going to give going to be a logical response? Let's start by looking at an essay topic. In some countries, teenagers have jobs while they are still students. Do you think this is a good idea? Support your opinion by using specific reasons and details. Now, first off, this particular essay is one in which we have to give an opinion. But notice, it is a defense essay largely because we have to think, is it a good idea to do this or not? We do have to defend and think about this. Of course, before we even give an opinion, it probably is helpful to think a little bit more about, well, what kind of job would be logical for teenagers to have? Well, here in the United States, logical jobs that teenagers have would probably be something involving, say, retail sales, maybe selling clothes at the mall, working at a movie theater as a ticket taker, cashier at a fast food restaurant, perhaps even helping their parents if their parents own a business, working in some sort of service industry, maybe mowing lawns or cutting the grass, or other part-time jobs, especially ones you would do after school or during the weekends. Now, what would not be logical? Well, for example, most teenage jobs aren't paid very well, so it would not be logical to say that teenagers could make a lot of money at these jobs. Also, it would not be logical to say that they'd be working full-time positions. The question more or less implies that these students are going to school. They are teenagers, after all. Also, we don't think of teenagers as being professionals yet. They may be learning valuable skills towards becoming professionals sometime in the future, but most of these jobs are, generally jobs that don't require some sort of degree from the university. Now, why is this important? Well, part of the idea in giving our personal opinion is to demonstrate that we have some experience with this type of question, because that's perhaps the only way we can show that we fully understand the topic. I mean, after all, it's going to be difficult to believe your ideas if you've never actually done the thing before in your life. So, if you try to argue that it's a good thing for teenagers to get a job, do you really know what those requirements would be? And think even deeper, do you really know what the difficulties would be for teenagers if they were going to get a job? Think about it for a moment. What would be logical in this case is that it would be difficult for teenagers because these work responsibilities could conflict with their homework, so their grades might suffer. If you try to argue that their grades wouldn't suffer at all, or that they would have plenty of time to study, that may not be the most logical response. Because oftentimes if teenagers are working after school, they may have to work 4 or 5 hours. And as we know, there are only so many hours in the week. And again, oftentimes jobs, especially on the weekends, may take up lots of their hours as well. Of course, another thing we have to think about is teenagers are sometimes working in areas that could be a little bit dangerous. Fast food, for example, could involve perhaps burning yourself if you accidentally miscooked or overcooked some particular item. Of course, what would not be logical? Well, for example, it would not be logical to argue that one difficulty would be that they would get paid too much, or that there would be absolutely no conflict between their life, their work responsibilities, and their grades. And of course, it would be very difficult to also argue that their grades wouldn't suffer at all. So, why is logic so important here? Well, we can have a better picture if we really think about all of these particular factors. So, if you were going to argue that their job would never interfere with their schoolwork, that would perhaps not be realistic and be a very difficult argument to make. Because honestly, there are only so many hours available in the day and week. So how can we put all the ideas we've learned in these videos together? Well, again, let's look at another topic. This particular topic is a defense essay. Learning about the past has no value for those of us living in the present. Do you agree or disagree? Use specific reasons and examples to support your answer. Again, the first thing we have to recognize is, what are we agreeing to if we agree with the statement? Well, if we agree, we're saying that learning about the past has no value. If we disagree, does that mean it has complete value, or is more value for us? Or perhaps is it some value? Most likely, if we disagree, the idea is we can disagree with the word no. And this is an idea we'll talk about a little bit later in our series. But for now, let's make sure we're clear. If we agree with the statement, we're going to say that learning about the past has no value. And if we disagree, we're going to say that it has some value. So first off, let's think. What are the reasons to agree with this statement? What are the reasons to disagree with this statement? What would be logical points to consider? And what would be points that would not be so logical? So, is learning from the past valuable or not? Let's start by looking at the logical arguments. First off, events usually tend to echo themselves. In other words, there are things about different events that occur in history that share some similarities, if not exactly the same ideas. Of course, another logical thing to think about is where the event takes place may also play a part. Culture, for example, can help play a very significant role in how the events may be shaped. Of course, it would probably not be logical to say that events happen in exactly the same way over and over. Even though there may be overwhelming similarities, clearly the people involved or the events, even the technologies involved, are not the same. So we couldn't necessarily argue that events always happen the same way and in the exact same detail. And of course, it would also be very difficult to say that all cultures are the same as well. That would not be logical. Even though we may have lots of common characteristics or traits, it would not be a good idea to say that we are all the same everywhere. Now, when it comes to the pro and con arguments, remember that this particular essay is somewhat backwards when it comes to its organization. If I agree with this statement, then I'm saying that basically learning from the past has no value. But if I'm speaking against the argument, I do think that there is some value to studying. So let's start with the pro arguments. Well, again, if we say that learning from the past has no value, one of the reasons we might want to think about is that comparisons themselves are not perfect. And often we misunderstand or are unable to interpret the results of historical events because, frankly, most people are not experts. So it would be very difficult for us to be able to look at all of the details and thereby make our comparisons most likely flawed. Another issue to think about is that if we follow the past, it might prevent us from seeing new and perhaps more innovative solutions to our current situation. Some people may be too conservative in their approach, and it might blind us to think about how we can solve this particular problem or situation now. Of course, we can recognize that events don't repeat themselves, but on the con side, we can think about the fact that they do provide some basic structure, and they do give us an idea of where to begin when trying to solve a modern problem. Many times it's very scary to try to solve a problem unless we know something about what history can teach us. And especially if the past had a negative outcome, we can try to work to remedy that situation using these new tools and technologies not available at the time. So again, notice both sides do have very valid arguments. The question, of course, is which one do you think would be easier for you to make? So, some final thoughts in our first set of series here when dealing with these writing tasks. In order to write a good response, we must first understand what the topic is asking us. And again, we refer to that as the type of essay or type of topic. We have to be able to think deeply about the topic as well. And today, looking at the defense essay, we used a strategy called looking at the pros and cons. Finally, we had to think about, well, what is a logical idea or logical response? And thinking about the reasons we give for that response. So, we have to begin by thinking, is this response logical? Does it make sense? Now it's time for you to do some homework. At the bottom of this page, you will see a homework link. Please finish this activity before our next online class. Thanks for watching this video. See you next week.